Exposed: How one black CEO's incredible flight disruption led to $4.9 billion in life-changing funding. David Johnson's heart raced as he stood in the bustling airport terminal, staring at those letters sprawled across the flight board: cancelled. The flight that was supposed to take him to the meeting of a lifetime, to pitch a tech startup aimed at breaking the digital divide in his community, was slipping through his fingers. He had poured his blood, sweat, and tears into this moment. All of the late nights, the relentless networking, the miles traveled, all leading to this night, and now it felt like the universe was conspiring against him. Frustration bubbled within him as he approached the airline staff. "Excuse me, I need to get to New York tonight," he said, calm yet insistent. The employee barely looked up from her screen, her dismissive shrug echoing experiences he'd faced countless times before. The glances of passers-by felt heavy, as if their whispers hung in the air. Why is he so eager? The unspoken biases lingering like smoke in the air. It hurt, it was all too familiar. "Nobody can help you, sir," she replied, the indifference making him feel smaller. He took a deep breath and stepped away. The dismissals reminded him all too vividly of the challenges he'd overcome, including deep-rooted prejudices that had tried to stifle his dreams from the very start. He picked up his phone, dialing his family. It rang, but there was no waiting. His mother's voice burst through, filled with tenacity. "David, listen. This isn't the end. Remember, you're doing this for us, for the community." Her words wrapped around him like a warm embrace. His mother, a retired schoolteacher, was the foundation of his resilience. "You've got this. Keep your chin up, you're meant for greatness." His younger sister echoed her spirit, excited about her latest business idea, reminding him, "You're a trailblazer, David. Change is inevitable if you keep pushing." Just hearing their belief lit a spark in his heart. Around him, the terminal hummed with life. Travelers strolled in their own narratives. A waitress shared her struggles with juggling 3 jobs, yearning for stability. A soldier consoled his anxious daughter, promising her brighter days. Stories of push and pull, hope and resilience weaving a tapestry of shared humanity. Then, as the clock ticked ominously, David caught the eye of a stranger in a sharp suit. It was an unexpected glimmer of fate. "What brings you here, young man?" the venture capitalist asked, noting David's tense posture. In moments, David found himself spilling his vision, words flowing like a river. $4.9 billion in funding could bridge our community's digital divide, not just dreams, but realities. The capitalist leaned closer, intrigued. Anticipation crackled in the air. But with every passion-fueled sentence, doubt crept in, whispering, "What if you don't deserve this?" Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The airline finally offered a compromise, a flight later that evening, but it felt like another half-hearted attempt to placate him. The tension clawed at his gut. David could feel the opportunity slipping away, but all he could think about was the sacrifices of his family and the hopes of his community resting upon his shoulders. Courage surged within him. He looked out at the airport hustle, the interconnected lives that needed his vision. Could this moment of disruption spark the change he'd dreamt of? Standing at that crossroads in his life, David faced uncertainty but also unlimited possibilities. Would he choose the safe route or take a leap toward a dream that could uplift so many? His heart pounded. He needed to make this decision, and quickly. David could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He glanced at the clock again. Time was slipping faster than he wanted to admit. Each tick echoed through the terminal, reminding him of what hung in the balance: his vision, his community, his family's dreams. He stood up taller, grounding himself with a deep breath. The question lingered in the air, was he willing to bet on himself? The voices around him were still buzzing, the soldier soothing his child, the waitress laughing with a customer, but they faded into the background. In that instant, all he could focus on was the venture capitalist. "Listen," David said, urgency lacing his voice. "This isn't just about a tech startup. This is about making sure kids in my community are not left behind in a world that's increasingly digital. This is about access, education, and opportunity. If we don't act now, we leave them with no way to compete." The venture capitalist's eyes narrowed, sensing the fire in David's words. Maybe he saw something he liked, maybe he didn't. But David knew he couldn't wait for an answer any longer. Before the man could respond, David's phone buzzed again. It was an alert, a news notification that caught his eye. "Breaking, prominent CEO calls out bias in venture funding." His heart skipped a beat. He recognized the name. James Taylor, a friend from his networking days, had just gone public with the very issues they were talking about. David felt a surge of hope, but also a jolt of realization. The spotlight had just shifted, and it could illuminate his path. "Do you know James?" David asked suddenly, trying to connect the dots. "He's been vocal about inclusive funding." This could. The capitalist nodded slowly, but there was still hesitation in his stance. "You need a solid pitch, David. I need to see numbers, impact projections. What do you have?" Panic threatened to grip him, but anger flared up alongside it. Why did he have to prove himself so much more? That familiar bitterness rose, but he channeled it into determination. "I've got data, access to the community, and a motive that runs deeper than profit." "You want numbers? You'll have them by morning." The capitalist's brow raised, a flicker of intrigue crossing his face. "You think you can create a comprehensive pitch in a few hours? It's ambitious, I don't think." "I know," David said, his voice firm. "I'll show you what it means to believe in something bigger than yourself. You're not just waiting on a flight, you're standing at the threshold of change." The man's expression shifted, curiosity blooming. "All right, meet me by the departure gate in 3 hours. Bring your projections, but also bring your heart. I want to see what you can really do." David nodded, sensing for the first time that maybe, just maybe, he was being heard. In that brief exchange, the visions of his family, his frustrations, and the hopes of his community came rushing back, gathering strength from deep within him. With renewed urgency, he dashed to the corner cafe, frantically gathering coffee and snacks. He had 3 hours to turn his dreams into a pitch powerful enough to resonate, not just with the capitalist, but with everyone who had ever doubted his vision. As he worked, surrounded by the whirring coffee machines and the clatter of busy travelers, he began to write an outline, pouring everything he had into it. The math, the potential, but most importantly, the emotion behind it all flowed onto the paper. He was fueled by something greater than fear. He was fueled by purpose. Suddenly, just as he was about to wrap things up, a commotion near the terminal's exit caught his attention. A figure was shouting, surrounded by a small crowd. David's heart raced again. Something was happening. "Is everything all right?" he wondered aloud, switching focus. The energy shifted in the room as people grew more agitated. He quickly gathered his notes and moved closer, feeling a sense of urgency pulling him forward. What was happening? And why did it feel like something was about to change everything? David edged through the crowd, his heart thumping in his chest. The murmurs grew louder, a mix of confusion and outrage. He could see the figure at the center, a taller, black man in a sharp suit, his expression fierce. It was James Taylor. David's breath caught. The man had a presence that demanded attention. "Enough is enough," James shouted, his voice cutting through the noise. "We can't sit idly by while the system ignores us. This isn't just about funding, it's about respect. It's about our lives, our children's futures. The gathering seemed to hold its breath. Faces of diverse backgrounds were mixed, some intrigued, others skeptical. David's mind raced. He was supposed to be thinking about his pitch, but now the weight of a bigger battle loomed in the air. Something shifted, and David felt the pull of solidarity with this man he hadn't spoken to in years but admired deeply. "James!" Someone yelled from the back, "You're just making it worse. No one cares what we have to say." With that challenge, a tense energy rippled through the crowd. David's heart broke a little. Too familiar. He had faced that same dismissiveness when pitching his ideas, and he couldn't shake the feeling that they were all interconnected. James's eyes scanned the crowd, locking in on the voice that had just spoken. "I care," he yelled back, fierceness lining his jaw. "And if you don't care, then you're part of the problem. We've been pushed aside for too long. We have the right to fight for our space, to demand what's ours." David watched as the people's murmurs shifted, some shaking their heads thoughtfully while others looked on, captivated. It was happening. The story was rising up, fueled by passion and undeniable truth. He desperately wanted to take this moment and seize it, to add his voice to the growing chorus. This was what he needed for his pitch. Not just numbers and projections, but heart, grit, and a real connection. Suddenly, James pointed toward David. "You there. You look like someone who understands what I'm talking about. We need more people who care in this fight." Caught off guard, David felt every eye turn toward him. The room felt electric. He took a deep breath, stepping forward. "I get it," he said, his voice shaky but growing steadier with each word. "I see it every day. We have talent, we have a dream. But we're overlooked. We need support to thrive." The crowd responded with murmurs of agreement, sparks igniting hope around him. "But we can change that," David pressed on, emboldened. "James is right. If we unite our voices, we show them our value. It's not just the money, it's what that funding represents: opportunity." Cheers began circulating, fueling the intensity. Every word sparked excitement, a feeling of purpose blurring the lines between them all. David felt empowered, like he was speaking for the children who needed someone to fight for them. Just as he felt the crowd rally behind his words, a voice cut through, authoritative and booming. "You're causing a scene. Everyone needs to disperse." David's stomach plunged as he recognized the security officer stepping forward. The urgency in the air shifted, and he could see the concern reflecting back in the eyes of the crowd. Fear threatened to creep back in, and he realized that this moment could go either way. Could they hold on to their newfound strength, or would the wave of authority push them back into silence? "Stay strong," James shouted, his charisma swallowing the fear. David felt a jolt of admiration. This was more than just a stand against funding bias, it was about creating a movement. As the tension mounted, David knew he had to act fast. He fumbled with his phone, ready to record, ready to share this moment and inspire others, the same way he wanted to inspire the venture capitalist that he was about to meet. But before he could hit record, chaos erupted. People began shouting, some began to inch away from the rising confrontation, and panic stirred in the air. In that moment of uncertainty, David glanced toward the departure gate. Time was slipping away, and so was his chance to make the pitch that could change everything. Yet deep down, he realized what was truly at stake here: changing hearts and minds. This was the pitch that mattered the most. "Hold on," he called out, his voice filled with urgency once more, "we have to stand together." Would they listen? Would they hold their ground against the establishment, or would fear scatter them again? David could feel his world teetering on a knife's edge, waiting for the choice that could build a bridge or break apart. What if the next few moments decided everything? David's words hung in the air, a desperate plea against an impending tide of uncertainty. The crowd, once roaring with energy, faltered under the stern gaze of the security officer. He saw faces rapidly shifting from defiance to doubt, and it sent a chill racing down his spine. Could they really stand together, or would they let fear override their newfound courage? "Stay with us." James's voice rose, steady as a pulse, pushing back against the wave of unease. "This is our moment. We need to show them, prove to ourselves that we're here to be heard." David sensed a flicker of hope in the crowd as some people began to move forward. A woman near the front, tears glistening in her eyes, looked around. "He's right. We're tired of being ignored. We deserve better." Her voice cracked, but it ignited a spark. One by one, others began to join in. "What do we want?" someone shouted. "Respect," came the resounding reply, their voices merging into an undeniable chant. The security officer shifted, confusion momentarily washing over him. He likely didn't expect a collective uprising, and for a fleeting moment, the atmosphere became electric again. David's heart raced, not with fear, but with an exhilarating blend of adrenaline and hope. Taking a bold step forward, he shouted above the noise. "We can't let them silence us. We are the future. This isn't just about funding, it's about change, about families, about justice. We are powerful together." The voices grew louder, swelling like an ocean tide. David's own voice threatened to crack under the intensity, but he pressed on, recalling the faces of those who depended on leaders like James and himself. They were not just names, but lives that could be transformed with just a little support. And then, a single voice rang out from the back, trembling but resolute. It was a young man, barely in his 20s. "I don't want my kids to grow up in a world where they think their dreams don't matter." The crowd roared, "We can change that." The floodgates opened as more voices joined the cause. David could feel the weight of their collective dreams forging a path towards something greater. But the officer still loomed, his brow furrowed. "This is your last warning. Disperse immediately." David felt the urgency. Time was slipping away, but the moment was alive, and he couldn't hold back any longer. "This isn't just a scene, this is a movement. We deserve representation, and we will not back down." A woman stepped up beside him, her hand gripping his shoulder. "David, we don't have to let them scare us. We are stronger than them." James nodded, his eyes reflecting the fire of determination. "Let us show them who we really are. Our lives matter. Our voices matter." As the words spilled from his lips, David could see a change in the room. The people locked eyes, a deep-seated understanding passing between them. They were easy to dismiss in the past, but not today. Today, their spirits rose higher than the weight of their struggles. Just as David's own heart surged with momentum, the sound of a loud horn blared across the venue. The departure gates suddenly came alive. Chairs scraped against the floor, and heads turned in bewilderment. The air crackled with something unexpected. "Is that?" James started, looking towards the exit. David squinted through the crowd. "It couldn't be." Dread nudged at him as he recognized the suit's broad shoulders and polished shoes. The very establishment they were rallying against was arriving. "We're out of time," he whispered to James. Before David could formulate a plan, the door swung wide, and in walked a trio of executives, cold, poised, and ready. "Now what?" David breathed, fear creeping back in. The eyes of the people shifted from the executives back to David and James, awaiting guidance. Would they freeze, or would they seize this moment? Every second felt stretched. David swallowed hard, sensing the enormity of what lay ahead. Could he rally them again? Would they find strength amidst the intimidating faces? His heart thundered. Time slipped away, and it came down to this crucial moment. "Together!" he shouted, urgency in his tone. "This is not over." But as he fought to keep their fire ignited, he wondered, would they stand united despite everything they had faced? Would they let fear turn them away, or would they lean into the struggle? Determination surged in David, but the uncertainty loomed larger. The executive's presence pulsated through the air, a reminder of a fight that was far from decided. Would they become the change they sought, or would the world keep spinning without them? Each heartbeat drummed the question louder, echoing in the silence that followed. The executive sauntered in like a storm, their aura heavy and suffocating. David felt the collective shift in the crowd, a wave of hesitation that rippled through them. The once unyielding voices now hovered uncertainly, questioning whether their resolve could withstand the looming authority of the corporate elite. "Good evening," one of the executives began, his voice smooth but laced with condescension. "I trust you are all aware this rally is not sanctioned. You might want to consider your options." He glanced at the security officer, who remained on high alert. David took a deep breath, the words coursing through his mind demanding to be spoken. "We're not going anywhere," he finally said, his voice breaking the creeping silence. "This is a crucial moment for our community. You may see us as just a crowd, but we are standing together for real change." A murmur spread through the crowd, reigniting the spark. They weren't just bodies, they were stories, families, and entire communities seeking acknowledgement and respect. The second executive, a woman with sharp features, stepped forward. "You think your voices matter? How naive. Decisions have already been made at levels far beyond any of us. You're wasting your time." She gestured dismissively, her eyes scanning the crowd as if appraising cattle. David clenched his fists. The words from earlier echoed in his head, "This isn't just a scene, this is a movement." He had to keep the momentum alive. "You can't ignore the voices of your constituents," he called out, emboldened by the sea of faces around him. "We're tired of being disrespected. We're here, and we're not backing down." In that moment, David's heart raced, not just from fear, but from anger and hope. The crowd's growing restlessness matched his heartbeat. A voice cried out from the back, "What do they know about our struggles?" And this prompted a ripple of agreement across the audience. The executives exchanged glances, uncertain. This was not what they had anticipated. They had expected a passive assembly, not a battleground of resilience. "I'll tell you what you don't understand," David continued, his breath steadying while the words flowed. "This isn't about money, this is about lives. We've been pushed aside for too long. Don't you see we're fighting for our dignity?" With every word, the initial doubt that had crept in flickered away. Even the woman beside him, still gripping his shoulder, lifted her chin in defiance. "We deserve to have a say. We deserve better. I don't want my kids growing up in a world where they think their dreams don't matter." Echoed from the crowd again. His heart swelled, bolstered by their shared determination. James took a step closer to David, his gaze unwavering. "Let's show them. They may hold the power, but we hold the truth. And truth has a way of breaking down walls." The leaders glanced at each other, realizing they were losing control of the narrative. Just then, the third executive smiled, a chilling, tight-lipped gesture that set alarm bells ringing in David's mind. "You think this is going to change anything?" she interrogated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You're dreaming if you think this disruption will alter our course." But her words, a challenge disguised as disdain, only seemed to fuel the fire ignited within the crowd. Murmurs rose. "We're not backing down. This will change. You'll hear us." As the energy intensified, David felt an electric charge sweep through him. For the first time, he noticed the edges of doubt curling into a resolute vision. "Fear keeps us shackled," he shouted. "But when we stand together, that fear melts away." He locked eyes with the executives, a silent war raging as both sides stared each other down. The momentum had shifted back to the people, and David's pulse hammered in his ears. But just as victory seemed possible, a loud crash reverberated from the far end of the hall. A table had collapsed under the pressure of some nearby supporters pushing closer to the front. In an instant, the atmosphere changed again. Would this accident extinguish their renewed courage? Or would it rally them, reminding everyone that they were indeed fighting for something so much larger than themselves? As the executives smirked, sensing an opportunity to regain control, David faced the crowd, heart racing once more. Determination began to cloud his mind. Would this be the moment they all fell apart, or could they rise, stronger than ever? The room froze for a split second. The sound of the crashing table echoed as if time itself paused. David's heart sank for a moment, desperation creeping in. Had their unity fractured with that noise? Yet, as his eyes darted across the crowd, he saw something stirring. People began to pull together, helping one another to stand firm and keep their ground as whispers of solidarity filled the air. "We're not leaving," someone shouted, igniting a flame in the collective spirit. The crowd, invigorated by the moment, began to chant, "Together! Together!" The rhythmic beating of their voices felt like a drum, calling for strength, resilience, and hope. David took a deep breath, gathering the energy swirling around him. He raised his hands, signaling for the crowd to quiet down. "Listen!" he hollered, his voice cutting through the noise. "That might have been a table, but we are not going to let one mishap dictate our message. We're here, and we're louder than ever." The executives stood visibly rattled, exchanging hurried glances, but David saw the fear in their eyes now. They had underestimated the fire within the people. This wasn't just a fight for respect, it was a battle for their futures, the lives of their children, the chance to be heard. "Look at us," David implored, sweeping his arm to emphasize the mass of passionate faces. "This isn't just a protest, this is our stand. Our voices matter more than your dismissals. We are a tapestry of experiences, woven together through struggles and triumphs." A wave of agreement surged through the crowd, each person reflecting the warmth of unity. David could feel that hope radiating. "Today, we're demanding to be seen. We won't vanish into the background anymore." The executive's veneer began to crack under the collective pressure. The woman with sharp features clenched her jaw, now instead of disdain, anxiety creased her brow. The men beside her shifted from foot to foot, pulse quickening as their authority felt less certain. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the crowd, a young mother, cradling a baby in her arms. She stepped forward, her eyes brimming with defiance. "I'm here because I want my daughter to dream," she said, her voice steady. "I want to let her grow up believing her voice doesn't matter. That's why I joined this rally today." A powerful silence enveloped the hall. The story was personal, relatable, and it tugged at everyone's heart. One voice emerged to represent a whole generation, igniting a wave of emotions across the audience. The crowd erupted in applause, rallying behind her. David felt a strength he hadn't realized was possible before. "We're all here for our families, for our children's futures, for a chance for something better." He was shouting now, and he could feel the gravity of his words reaching deeper than he anticipated. "Let's take this energy and push it forward," David declared, emboldened by the story surrounding him. He locked eyes with the executives, challenging them. "You can ignore us, belittle us, but you won't break us. We will rise, and this is just the beginning." The crowd responded as if a dam had burst, voices intermingling into a spirited crescendo that filled the air. They stood arm in arm, united, a force of nature that could no longer be ignored. But just as victory seemed within reach, a loud voice cut through the chaos, echoing from the back. A tall figure stepped forward, an unexpected ally. "I have information you need to hear." All eyes turned toward this newcomer, curiosity and suspicion mixed in the air. What could this person reveal that might change the tide of the moment? Would it provide them with the additional leverage they so desperately needed? David felt his heart race again, bracing for the revelation that could either uplift them further or throw them into chaos. What would this new voice bring to their battle? The crowd held its breath, eyes fixed on the newcomer. The tall figure, dressed sharply in a crisp suit, seemed to exude an air of authority that neither David nor the executives could ignore. His just barely restrained energy crackled in the air, a contrast to the tension that hung between the protesters and the suits. "My name is Marcus Steele," he announced, his voice powerful and commanding. "And I've been watching all of you." David wondered who Marcus was. Just another executive? Or an ally? The crowd murmured, shifting restlessly. Their initial enthusiasm was tempered by uncertainty. "I know how difficult it is to fight for a seat at the table," Marcus continued, meeting the eyes of several crowd members as if he were picking out their individual stories. "But some of us in the corporate world are fighting alongside you. If you allow me, I want to share what I've been working on." What could he possibly know? David thought, trying to keep the anxiety off his face. But as Marcus began explaining his own story, the tension seemed to unravel. "I run a company that's been innovating to lift underrepresented voices," Marcus said, his brow furrowing slightly as he continued. "I've faced resistance myself, just like you all. I was in charge of the flight that led to some major disruptions. That wasn't my only fight, though. It opened doors for funding $4.9 billion to be exact, dedicated to amplifying communities that have been left behind." Gasps rippled through the crowd. David felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. Could this be the catalyst they had been searching for? "I came here today because I want to commit a portion of that funding to support your cause," Marcus said, his words hanging in the air like a promise. "This isn't just about money, it's about pride, dignity, and making real changes that matter. Let us channel this energy and create something lasting together." The crowd erupted into a mix of disbelief and excitement, hushed whispers cutting through the enthusiasm. Some questioned his motives, while others felt compelled by the chance he was offering. David's heart raced. Was this too good to be true? "Hold up," someone shouted from the back. "How do we know this guy isn't just saying what we want to hear?" Marcus faced the skeptics with calm intensity. "I get it. Trust is hard-won. I've walked in your shoes. Let us sit down together, have real conversations about what you need, what change looks like, and how this funding can work for all of us." David could sense the tide shifting, a flicker of unity sparking in the clash of doubt and hope. He stepped forward, voice steady. "Let us talk, then. But if this is the moment we're waiting for, we have to be real. We've got needs, demands, but we're here for change." An undercurrent swept through the crowd as people began to rally behind David's words. His call to action resonated as they chanted again, "Together. Together." Marcus nodded, genuine admiration evident as he raised his hands to call for calm. "You have a voice. You deserve to be at the table. Let us innovate this process, make it real." Just as a new resolve began to envelope the crowd, David noticed a small group of executives whispering hastily amongst themselves. Feeling unnerved, he turned to Marcus. "What's their next move?" Before Marcus could answer, the sharp-featured woman broke away from the huddle, her eyes glowing with defiance. "We will not be intimidated. But how do we turn this commitment into something tangible?" David felt the pressure rise. A challenge was being issued. Would they be strong enough to embrace the changes unfolding before them? As murmurs continued to swirl, David looked towards Marcus, who was glancing back towards the executives and then back at the crowd. The air was charged, and a new chapter loomed ahead. They needed clarity, and fast. Would they rise up or fall apart? The answer hung heavily between them, leaving the crowd at a precarious crossroad. What would they decide next? The atmosphere was electric, hearts were pounding, and eyes were wide with hope and skepticism alike. The executives were still conferring, their whispers sharp, punctuated by glances toward Marcus as if he had struck a chord they weren't ready to face. David's heart raced. What if this was their moment? A chance to shift the tide? But uncertainty gnawed at him. Could they trust Marcus? Would this commitment be anything more than a fleeting promise? Let us not waste this chance, David called out, keeping his voice steady despite the flurry of emotions swirling within him. If they're nervous, that means we have power. Let us harness this. A ripple of agreement surged through the crowd, but the executives seemed increasingly uneasy. The sharp-featured woman was still standing on the sidelines, arms crossed defiantly. She was a hurricane of raw energy, challenging the narrative Marcus had spun, a fierce guardian of her people. "What's your plan, then?" she finally asked, cutting through the noise. Her voice cracked like a whip but trembled with vulnerability. "What are we supposed to do with just a portion of funding and empty promises?" Marcus took a deep breath, his brows knitting for a moment. "I want to establish a task force, a working group filled with your representatives. We'll sit down together, lay out a framework, talk logistics. If we're going to be genuine in making change, it needs to start here, amongst you. Your input matters, and we'll design this program based on your community's needs." The woman remained unconvinced, but murmurs of interest spread through the crowd. David felt the momentum building again, a pulse of energy he hadn't sensed moments before. He stepped closer to her. "Maybe we should hear him out. If funding is on the table, we can shape it. Create programs that genuinely support us." "And what's in it for you, Marcus?" The woman shot back, her tone still skeptical. "Why come here now? What's the angle?" "There's no angle, just urgency," Marcus replied, his voice steady yet earnest. "This funding could alter the landscape. Communities need allies. Your stories need to be heard, the realities faced. I won't let this go to waste." David saw the resolve begin to soften in the woman's eyes, a flicker of vulnerability mingling with her fierce disposition. "We need accountability," she said, almost as if she were testing the water. "If we go ahead, we'll need benchmarks and metrics. We don't want to end up back in the shadows again. We've fought too long." "Absolutely," Marcus agreed, leaning forward slightly. "I want this to be transparent and collaborative. We will hold each other accountable." David felt the tension begin to ease, anticipation replacing the heaviness that had settled in the air. There was a real possibility of partnership here. But just as hope surged, a sharp voice rang out from the throng of executives. "Do you really believe you can change the corporate hierarchy? We've been sticking to the status quo for years. And you're just throwing money around hoping for a miracle?" The question hung like a cloud, threatening to rain down doubt. Marcus turned toward the executive, his expression firm yet open. "Change starts with willingness. It won't be easy, it'll take bravery from all sides. But if we don't start now, we'll remain stagnant." The crowd began to stir again, murmurs of both agreement and dissent cascading through them like waves. David felt his pulse quickening as he sought the right words, but the stakes felt higher than ever. Was this venture destined for success or for another fall? The thought clenched his stomach as he sensed the tipping point fast approaching. They could either forge ahead together or risk losing it all again. "Every journey begins with a choice," he shouted, igniting a fire in the crowd. "Do we take that leap of faith? Together?" The question loomed, heavy in the air, leaving everyone wondering, would they face the fear or retreat once more into silence? As the murmurs swelled around them, David could feel the weight of each heartbeat in the room. It was palpable, an electric current running through the crowd, a mix of hope, fear, and anger. He clutched the podium tighter, eyeing the woman with crossed arms, who had transformed from a wary skeptic to a vulnerable adversary. "Let us remember why we're here," Marcus said, sensing the momentum shifting. "It's not just about funding, this is about recognition. This is about equity. We need to rewrite the narrative together." The crowd quieted, hanging on his words. Slowly, the sharp-featured woman unfolded her arms, her resolve still evident, but mixed now with curiosity. David could see her heart wrestling with her mind, torn between protecting her community and the glimmer of possibility in Marcus's offer. "Are you really willing to invest your time, not just your money?" she challenged. "Because we've seen this dance before. Promises crumble once the dust settles." Time. Marcus paused, gathering his thoughts. "Time is what it takes to build trust. I'm here for the long haul. We can't dip in and out like tourists in a foreign land. We need to immerse ourselves, understand the fabric of your communities. This isn't just a project, it's a pledge." A spark of something began to grow in the audience. They were warming to him. David could see it in their shifting expressions, the way they leaned closer, drawn in by Marcus's sincerity and belief. "Fine," the woman answered slowly, her voice losing some of its cutting edge. "But if you fail us, it won't just be another corporate misstep. This will hurt us deeply. We've suffered before. We won't stand by to watch it happen again." "I understand," Marcus said, his eyes locked onto hers with intensity. "That's why your voices matter. That's why we need to lay down expectations from the start. Together, we can set the parameters, and I'll answer directly to you." The tension crackled, each moment more fragile than the last. Then a younger man spoke up from the back, his voice wavering but filled with passion. "What if this time we get it right? What if we seize this moment to lift each other? Think about what we could create together. This could change everything." A ripple of agreement sweeps through the crowd, resonating like a distant drumbeat, growing in intensity. Hope filled the space, but David couldn't help but question if that flicker would last or flicker out just as quickly. "Let's take a vote," he called out, wanting to harness the growing enthusiasm before it dissipated. "Who supports moving forward with Marcus? Who believes we can build something together?" Hands shot up, faces glowing with determination. The wave spread, a chorus of yes filling the room, but the woman remained still, her eyes narrowing as she assessed Marcus anew. "Very well," she replied at last. "But know this, we will hold you accountable. All your promises, all your words, they better lead to change, or we'll rise against it." "Understood," Marcus nodded solemnly. "I'm ready for every challenge. I want you fighting for it. I want us in this ring together." David barely contained his excitement. This was at the beginning. But as the euphoria swelled, a sudden shriek from the back of the hall split the air. "Don't believe him. He's lying." Everyone turned, stunned. The expression on the face of a woman from the executive group said it all, a platform crumbling before their eyes. Who was she? Why did she look so fed up? David exchanged worried glances with Marcus. What other secrets lay hidden amongst them? With his heart racing, David faced the woman who shouted, uncertainty coiling in his gut. They had just taken a monumental step, but were they truly prepared for what was to come next? Where is this going, and who can we really trust? The atmosphere in the room thickened with tension, as if the air was charged with the uncertainty hanging above them. The skeptic in the rear, a woman with fierce eyes and jaw set rigid, took a step forward, her voice trembling with conviction. "His words are just that, words. I've seen enough executives come in with big promises, only to bail when it gets tough." David felt the sentiment in her voice, an echo of the pain and betrayal that had seeped into the lives of so many. It wasn't just a challenge, it was a reckoning. He found himself caught between hope and fear, seeing both the shared skepticism and the glimmer of possibility. "Let us give Marcus a chance," David urged, the fire in his belly igniting once more. "This isn't just one man's promise, this is about our community coming together to shape our future. If we walk away now, we lose everything." The crowd turned, murmuring uncertainly, but then, slowly, a chorus of agreement began to build. The stakes were high, and people yearned for the chance to forge a new path. Their voices danced over one another, reflecting their dreams and fears. Marcus stepped forward again, eyes fierce. "You have every right to be skeptical. But if this is my chance to prove my commitment, I won't waste it. I want to run. This is the fire of real change, and together, we can forge a future of opportunities." The woman, still digging in her heels, remained silent for a moment, weighing her words. Finally, she nodded. "I'll stand with you, but if you break that trust—" "I won't," Marcus interrupted, his voice steady. "Together, we're unstoppable." As the tension relaxed, David felt a rush of exhilaration. The moment marked a shift, a turning point. They were battling not just for funding, but for respect, identity, and the promise of hope for their families. A new era was rising. Within the crowd, hands shot up, ready to forge commitments, people offering their skills, talents, and visions in the name of unity. David looked around, heart swelling as he watched the community ignite with passion, their doubts giving way to resolve. Hope was being molded, shaped by every heart that joined the call. "We need a plan," someone shouted. "What's our first step?" "We mobilize," David replied, excitement crackling in the air. "Let us hold open forums, gather testimonies, and outline our community's needs so Marcus can advocate for us effectively. We need a coalition." Heads nodded in agreement as energy swirled around him, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, fear was replaced with faith. They had been hurt before, yes, but this time felt different. It felt real. And just then, as laughter and animated discussions began to bubble up, the sharp-featured woman finally broke into a smile. "You know what? Let us start today. I want to hear from everyone, their dreams and hopes. By morning, we'll have a framework ready." With every word spoken, David could see the barriers melting, walls of mistrust giving way to a collective strength they had yet to wield. The crowd erupted into cheers, arms raised high, the sense of unity palpable. Marcus stepped back, content to watch this transformation unfold. In the crowd, smiles brightened faces, people who had once been strangers, now comrades. Dreams woven together like a vibrant tapestry. And as they began to disperse, creating groups to strategize and galvanize, David felt a rush of gratitude wash over him. His heart swelled with pride. They weren't just fighting to bridge the digital divide, they were challenging the very fabric of their society, demanding that everyone's voice be valued. Over the next few weeks, they rallied, meeting in community centers, over coffee, in living rooms, their collective fire fueled by a shared mission. And every time David looked around, he saw the faces of hopeful children and tired mothers, the immense potential resting in their hands. Marcus held his end of the bargain, investing resources, time, and support. Gradually, the stories they created, the actions taken, and the respect gained transformed that promise into reality. And as he stood on that stage months later, this time presenting a powerful pitch not just to potential investors, but alongside his community, David finally felt a sense of fulfillment. He was living proof of their collective resilience. Facing the audience, David's voice resonated with clarity. "We are not just here for funding, we are here to claim our rightful place, build bridges, and uplift our communities." Applause erupted like fireworks, and David knew then that they had taken every doubt and turned it into strength. With every handshake, every tear shed for joy, they had proved that change wasn't just possible, it was inevitable when they stood together. And that is how dreams are realized, not just by words, but through determination, unity, and the unwavering belief that every single voice matters. As the evening wore on, David reflected on the journey, feeling his heart full of gratitude and joy. They had not only disrupted the system, but they had transformed it, a testament to the strength of community. Change was indeed possible, and they had only just begun. Now, dear friends, if you've been inspired by this journey, hear me loud and clear, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support and not miss the exclusive stories weaving change in our world. Hit that like button now to feed the algorithm and let your voice be heard. Leave a comment sharing your reactions and feelings about this electrifying ending. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Let's lift each other up, amplify these stories, and keep the fire roaring. Together, we can create a wave of change.